These are the voices that make Missouri work. This is Profiles from the Heartlander. Well, Congressman, it's great to catch up with you, sir.
Good to be here.
So let me start by asking you, you're just about done with your first couple of years in Congress. As a freshman, as a new member, what have you thought about it all?
Well, I tell you what, I never came here thinking that we would make so much history as the 118th class. I mean, it took us 15 votes to get Kevin McCarthy elected Speaker. I remember folks back in the district asking me after I won the primary, who are you going to vote for Speaker? And I said, Kevin McCarthy. And they said, why aren't you voting for Jim Jordan? I said, because he's not running and he's supporting Kevin McCarthy. But we got Kevin over the hump there. We had, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but we had this thing called motion to vacate. To basically, it got whittled down to one person could file a motion to fire the speaker. And that's what Matt Gaetz did. 8 people voted in favor. And so, you know, and the Republicans and all the Dems, of course, and Kevin was gone. Big mistake. Speaker Johnson is great. Great man of God. In fact, we just had prayer time today in his office every Thursday morning. 12 of us gather around and pray for him, and we prayed for the protection of Donald J. Trump and prayed for our district. It's amazing that we're sitting here in the Capitol being able to do that. I love that about America. So we've made history, but we've done some important things for our district. And I know it seems like there's a lot of intransigence up here, that we don't get things done. And I'm sure we'll get into that. That does happen when it comes to the appropriations process, although we're making strides in that. This time last year, we only had 1 of the 12 appropriation bills passed. We're supposed to have them all done by the end of September to fund the government. This year we had 5. So that's a 500% increase, right, Chris? So I'm trying to be the positive, happy warrior here. But this whole process has been jacked up. We have not done through regular order the budget process nor the appropriations process in 40 years, 1994. That's how jacked up it is here in Washington, because the Democrats want to wait and wait and wait. That's what they're doing over in the Senate right now. We get our work done. They sit on it. Schumer's Senate shenanigans is what I call it. They sit on things and come back and jam us with what's called an omnibus bill. At the end of the year, we want to go home and spend Christmas with our families. And we're here on Christmas Eve voting on this monstrosity of a bill that's loaded with all this pork that we don't have time to read. And all these programs, this liberal progressive crap gets in there. And it usually passes because we don't want to shut down the government. One of the things, you know, I hear a lot of people in our district saying, well, shut down the government, shut down. Okay, I'm kind of with you on that. But what happens in an election year when the military doesn't get paid, when federal workers don't get, and I know we do back pay, I get that. But the way that the Biden-Harris administration has ruined our economy, there's people living paycheck to paycheck right now. They can't wait 6 weeks to get paid. And so the media, who's on the sides of the Democrats, are going to blame the Republicans. We'll lose the presidency. We'll lose control of the House. And I think we would still have control of the Senate. But we've got to be able to get things done for the people of America and for the 4th Congressional District. And that's why I am concentrating on the things that I can do on the Armed Services Committee, on the Agriculture Committee, on Small Business Committee to make positive baby steps for our district, for our state, and for our nation.
One of the things that I know you know better than most is the communications business, and you know what it means to be able to communicate simply, clearly to people. You come from that background. It seems to me that in 2024 and beyond, for someone to be effective in an elected office like yours or higher, you really need to be able, particularly as a conservative, to joust with the media. If you can't, it's almost impossible to survive media interaction these days. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think your use of the term jousting is appropriate. Most of the media, not all, there are some good journalists up here in D.C., but many of them, let's put it this way, have an agenda. They may not realize don't want to admit it, but you know that's when you know really you have a problem, when you can't admit it. But they can't help themselves. They have grown up. They have been indoctrinated with this liberal progressive viewpoint, and they think it's the right way. And so they're going to do, I mean, look at what we're seeing right now with Trump. The way that ABC conducted that debate, if you want to call it that, was atrocious. I thought CNN, Jake Tapper, and Dana did a pretty good job. But ABC is clearly in the tank for Harris. The recent National Association of Black Journalists interviewed Harris, and it was like she was a kindergarten teacher reading to the Three Stooges. And you look at what they did to Trump, and he gets in there, and it's like, rah, 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 rah. And hey, I don't mind tough questions. We should get tough questions. Trump can answer the tough questions. He didn't have to go into that lion's den, but he did it. And so the media is in the tank overall for the liberal Democrats. I get that. My brothers and sisters in our Republican conference, they know it. To some of them, it's very intimidating because they know that it will be edited, an interview will be edited, scoped down to make them look as bad as possible and not give the full, clear picture, which is a journalist's duty. It is the duty of the journalist, if you're going to try to get opposing viewpoints, to fairly represent those in the segment that you edit out. If you're not doing that, if you're trying to be biased in your approach to that, that is anathema to what journalism should be all about. That's why I think we need to reimagine journalism in America. I'm going to write a book about that someday. What I'm trying to do as a person who left the media after 35 years, God gave me a certain set of talents, and I've honed those over 35 years. And yes, I want to help our conference communicate. Elise Stefanik does great. I ran for the vice chair position when Mike Johnson got graduated up to speaker. He was a vice chair, and part of that is trying to help the conference communicate, getting people on the floor doing effective floor speeches. Chris, I'm a big believer in trying to win people over. I don't use emotion. I'm a very rational, reasonable person, and let's win people over to conservative values through smart argumentation. Enough of the name calling, enough of raising voices. We can win people over because we have the right ideas for America. And so I'm trying to help our brothers and sisters in our conference train to do that. Not all of them are comfortable in front of a camera or doing a podcast. But everyone, what I told them when I was running, I did not get the position. There were 8 people in it. Everyone thought as a freshman I was crazy for running for it, but I did it anyway. Came in 3rd, but I'm still helping them. And I'm helping the person who won, the current vice chair, train other members. But people are intimidated because they know, look, the media is not looked on favorably here, and I think they're a little bit scared of the media. And what I tell them, look, we have a symbiotic relationship. They need us to do their stories, but we need them to get our message out. So how do we take advantage of that relationship to make sure what we're saying does have reason, is rational, and is compelling and inspirational to the American people?
When people back home hear about Congress, it's often not very positive. You've alluded to that. The old axiom is people hate Congress but love their congressman. I mean, it seems like when I see on social media, there's a lot of love for you. When you go home to your district, there's a lot of love for you.
There's some hate.
But there's some hate too, sure, naturally. What do people misunderstand about this place? Now that you've physically been here and then you go home to your district, what do people misunderstand about this place, or would you want people to know about this place?
I think what's mostly misunderstood is the way we operate here. And I'm still not 100% certain on how that works. I know how it's supposed to work. I know under the Federalist Paper number 10 what the responsibility of a representative is. And part of my responsibility is to represent 772,047 individuals, not just Republicans, but Democrats, independents, and politically agnostic. I should treat them all the same. I'm not going to vote the way they want me to, but I'm voting the way the majority of them wants me to vote. But my job is also to go into my district and help bring people along, educate them about the issues. We don't have a lot of representatives doing that because it takes time. I have 24 counties. It's a lot of travel. I put 110,000 miles in my Ford Expedition in 2 years. But it's worth it because I get to be out there. That's what a representative is supposed to do. That's why we get elected every 2 years, because we got to be in the district listening to the people to be their voice and their vote. This is a weird place in that I've got in my shelf, I'll show you sometime, Jefferson's rules. It's about that thick for how we're supposed to operate. And we don't operate that way. We haven't gone through the normal budgetary and appropriations process, I said, in 40 years since 1994. We've got to get back to that. Our leadership knows that, but I don't think there's an appetite for enough people to convince the leadership that we've got to do that. We've got to make the floor time to do that. We're up here, 117 days a year, half a year. The rest of the time we're working in the district. I think we need to be up here more. If we're going to be able to get 12 appropriation bills done by the time we go home for our in-district work session, end of July and all of August, that's going to take floor time to do that. We've had a lot of good bills come through. H.R. 2, the Secure Border Act that we passed in May of last year that would actually secure the border, sent it over to Chuck Schumer's desk, hadn't done squat with it. They don't want to acknowledge the problem. A lot of good messaging bills, but our primary function as the U.S. House of Representatives is to fund the government. And through the appropriations process, that's how we do it. We get our 12 appropriation bills out, funding the government. As I said, we passed 5 of those on the floor, funding roughly 73% of the government so far. But it's called regular order. You hear a lot of people talking about regular order. That's what it is. Following the rules, getting back to regular order where we fund our government. Then we go back into the district to work for 6 weeks. And especially prior to election, you're doing some campaigning for that election year. And then maybe the rest of the year we work on these other things, unless there's something immediate, like came up with the Secure Border Act. But people see Washington as broken. The system is broken. We've also lost our ability to work across party lines. It's hard to get, with the slim majority that we have right now, 4-seat majority, it's hard to get anything done because the Democrats are set in their ways. They don't want to give us a win. They really didn't want to give Trump a win, okay? But they don't want to give us a win, and we don't want to give them a win. So getting something, you've got to have 218 votes to get something passed. And when you have different factions of our Republican conference not voting on something, you've got to bring Democrats along. Now, people will say, well, you're compromising. I'm not compromising anything. I'm not compromising my values, my morals. I'm not compromising a reflection of how my district wants me to vote. What I am doing when I'm up here getting bills passed, trying to get the Farm Bill through, which is so important to our constituency and it's important to America, I am negotiating. Everyone's negotiated. You negotiate for the price on the car. You negotiate for your house. You negotiate in relationships. I've been married 35 years. I've done a lot of negotiations. Most of them I haven't won. But life is a negotiation. And so, I'm trying to bring people along. I'm establishing relationships with people like Jonathan Jackson, Jesse Jackson's son. But we're on the Ag Committee together. And I may have told you this story, but all he cares about is a food stamp program. It's 82% of the Farm Bill, $1.5 trillion over 10 years is the total Farm Bill. He doesn't understand the relevance of why farming is. Why are we giving these safety nets, providing safety nets to the farmers so they can get insurance, so they can get loans to operate their farms? I invited him to Kansas City and to our state fair in Sedalia. He had never been. He milked a cow. He's kept wondering, why are all these kids running around with these corduroy jackets, these blue? What's FFA? This is a guy on the Ag Committee. Wow. I said, Jonathan, that's the FFA. You know, we went to their building. He met a lot of them. He says, we need to start one of these chapters in South Chicago. I said, well, I want to be there to see that. Jonathan ended up coming and staying at my house that night. We had a cigar, a glass of bourbon, and talked. We talked about gun issues. He kept calling it gun violence. I said, Jonathan, think about it. It's not gun violence. It's human violence. Gun is just the apparatus used to carry out human violence. We've got to change people's hearts and minds. they don't call it knife violence when somebody's stabbed. He said, that makes a good point. We talked about abortion, and I'm very 100% pro-life. We talked about the protection. I feel personally, look, we as Republican conservatives have kind of left the woman out of this picture. We've protected the unborn baby, but a mom is part of the deal. I mean, it's two bodies connected by one umbilical cord, and I believe in life-affirming care for the mother and the baby that God is growing inside of her. He started to see my point. Now, because of our relationship, I got him to sign on to a bill that I never would have gotten a sponsor for on the Democrat side, called the Fair Label Act. Right now, in labs across the United States of America, they are growing protein to make it look like steak and hamburger. And they're going to try to call it meat. It's not meat. And our Fair Label Act that Jonathan Jackson signed on to because of our relationship would make it illegal to put meat on that label. And that's going to protect our farmers and producers and cattle ranchers and swine producers and poultry, because it allows the busy mom in the urban core who's got maybe some children in the shopping basket, and they're trying to get their food. And when you go down through the frozen food section or the meat aisle and you see meat, you're just going to pick it up. We want people to be educated about what they're eating. I don't have anything against other forms of protein. I wouldn't eat it, but you can't call it meat. So my point is, I know that's a long answer, but I think people want us to be enemies, and I don't consider every Democrat an enemy. I don't like the squad up here. I think some of them don't have the best interest of America at heart, and I've seen that. But there are some Democrats who want to do the right thing, and I'm trying to win them over. And I may even flip Jonathan Jackson before it's all done. Who knows?
In fact, you and I spent some time together just last week. You brought Congressman Jim Jordan back to your district as well, so you've brought a lot of members back to the district. This fall, now as we're looking at your first kind of reelection cycle, how do you see things? Just generally speaking, the process of running for reelection, do you like that? Because it does take, as we all understand, it takes money. It takes energy to run for office and stay competitive. So that whole process, I mean, you did it the first time to get here, but now you're trying to re-up. Talk about it.
Of all things, being a Congress member is like 4 jobs in one. You're always running for re-election. You're always raising money. I have all my committee work that I'm working on, and I'm trying to be an expert in military affairs, which I was never in the military, but I just had a 3-hour dinner with a colonel, the commanding officer last night of Whiteman Air Force Base. We're getting the B-21 Stealth Raider to Whiteman Air Force Base, and I had a role in, it's a small role, but I had a role in that. Working on the Farm Bill, small business, trying to get the SBA back into gear and to actually serve America rather than trying to register Democrat voters. How about coming to the rural areas in my district and help people start small businesses? How about that? So that's one of the role. And then, of course, voting on the legislation. I have a great staff here that educates me about, what our bills are, what's coming up, and then researching those and where we need to be on those particular bills. So it's a lot of work. I was in television in Kansas City for 23 years, overall 35 years, and I always had a side hustle. I had a booming real estate business when I was in Kansas City, had a custom clothing business. When I was in college, I landscaped, I roofed houses in Houston, Texas for a short while. But I have never worked this hard in my life. I don't really think I've ever had a job until this, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
And maybe it's because I was so at ease on television, it didn't seem like a job. I would like to think that I worked hard when I was on the set, but my point is, this is work, and it's worth it to me. It's kind of a sacrifice being away from Leslie for 3 or 4 nights a week, but it makes the reunion much sweeter. But I love it, and I'm going to be 61 in October, and I always wanted to be in television since I was 5th grade, but I have never, Chris, had this much passion, focus, direction, energy of anything I've ever done. And that's how I know it's from God. That's why, and this may sound corny to some people out there, but God kind of pushed me out the window and said, trust me on this. And when I did, when I finally got in the race, everything clicked into place. And so I don't worry about how much money I'm going to raise. I don't worry if somebody's going to take me on in a primary next time. I don't worry about the Democrat opponent. God's in control. And if God and the voters want somebody else in here, I'm not going to be here forever. I get that. And that's why I'm concentrating on my staff. I'm like, I'm not going to be here forever. You guys are going to be around. My job is to help you get the next best job. Stick with me while you can, but let me know where you want to go. Who can I introduce you to? What training can we get? Where do you want to go next? My job is to represent the people, but also help build our staff up and help them fly.
You've been generous with your time. I know you want to get back to your district and your wife, celebrating 35 years. So, Congressman, thanks for your time, and it's a pleasure to catch up.
Chris, we've known each other how long? 25 years? Yeah. You are one of the most stellar individuals, a clear thinker, a great family man, and brother in Christ. And I just appreciate you so much for using your skills for His glory. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.